Go ahead, Kim.
Good morning, everyone. Well, it is 10. Should we go ahead and get started? Okay. Well, thank you all for being here today, and I welcome you to the session, How Do We Get Faculty to Adopt OER, a case study of Stevenson University, and this is sponsored by Maryland Online. Today, we're going to hear how Stevenson University tackled that challenge, and it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Jesse Schneiderman. Jesse started his career in education by teaching high school history for 7 years in the South Bronx and West Baltimore, and followed that by running a successful adult education program in Baltimore, helping adult learners earn their GEDs or learn English. Currently, Jesse runs the Stevenson Zirkin Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and focuses on OER adoption, UDL, productive use of AI, and equity in higher education. I will monitor the chat, but Jesse doesn't mind questions as he goes along, so don't hesitate to unmute and ask. With that, Jesse, let's get started.
Hey, everybody. I'm really happy to be here this morning and to be talking about the work we did to get OER moving at Stevenson. So I'm going to be using Mentimeter today, and if you are unfamiliar with Mentimeter, I'm going to encourage you to go to the menti.com thing and enter the code that it says, and just like someone give me a verbal confirmation that you can in fact see my title screen.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'm going to encourage everybody to see this little bit at the top that says join at menti.com and use the code. I'm going to encourage everybody to do that. Because there's a couple times I'm going to ask you to do something interactive, including at the start right here. So in one word, as best as you can, one word, hyphens are okay, but one word is best. I'm going to ask us to share the biggest challenge to getting faculty to adopt OER. And so if you go to menti.com and enter the code, you can do that on your phone or on your computer. It'll pop up with an option for you to share that information. And what it's going to do for us is it's going to create a little word cloud. And I use this with my classes. I also am a professor in the School of Education at Stevenson. And I teach a 75% schedule in addition to running the Center for Teaching and Learning here. And so I use Mentimeter with my classes all the time. They really like it. And it does cost money to use for the year. So I do pay at the beginning of the academic year. It's like $100 and it stores all my presentations. I get all access to this stuff. So it's a lot of fun. I'm going to give like 30 more seconds for folks who are still trying to figure out or get to respond. The other thing I really like about Mentimeter, just while we're sitting here, is that students, if I'm using Mentimeter in class and students are logged into the Menti, they can just see the presentation on their computer. They don't need to look up at the screen necessarily, which is really helpful for students. It's just a way to kind of differentiate for students who have different needs. So what I'm seeing is a lot of different things. Time is a big one. Time is our biggest one, and that's what I'm seeing the most. That's kind of our word cloud has created, right? Time is our biggest thing that we're seeing, and I absolutely ran into that at Stevenson as well. The inertia towards OER is a really big difficulty that we were able to work on, and that's kind of like our biggest thing I think we were successful in, is kind of moving that inertia in the correct direction. Part of that was getting faculty to have the knowledge about it without adding to their workload. That was a really big piece for us. That was the work we needed to do, and the thing with faculty and getting faculty to adopt things in general is it's really important for us to understand the way faculty work. I'm going to get into that a little more later, but you really have to understand the way the teachers work. The way teachers work is they're always thinking about their classes. but they don't always have time to think as deeply as maybe we'd like. And so we need to figure out ways to kind of finagle our way in so that when they are thinking about their classes, it fits what we're doing. That's kind of what we're doing. I see Charmaine said familiarity, which I really appreciate in the chat as well. People just don't know what it is, right? And we need to teach folks what that is. So overview of Stevenson. We're not a big university, 3,800 students in both online and in person, and our grad and our undergrad, all together 3,800 students. It says 5 schools, it's 6 schools, that's my bad. But we have 120 faculty about. Our School of Sciences, School of Nursing, School of Education, Business and Leadership, Humanities and Social Science, and our School of Design and Communications. So we have a lot of different programs at Stevenson, about 90 majors, and a number of faculty across all those majors. But we're not a big school, and as such, we don't have a ton of resources to get faculty into this. Like I said, I run our Center for Teaching and Learning, and I teach a 75% course load. And so we don't have a ton of resources for faculty to have all this extra time and course releases and all this stuff to do this. It's really just a matter of incorporating it into the day-to-day and figuring out a way to reach faculty where they are so that they can consider using OER. And I know that this was said at the beginning by Kimi, but like, please, please, please interrupt me at any time. I do not mind being interrupted. I'm not always going to be able to see the chat, but I'm going to do my best. But please just interrupt me if you have questions or comments at any time. Our project was based on a grant from the Maryland Open Source Textbook Initiative. They have institutional grants that they give out every year. We've received an institutional grant from Most. Most is amazing. They're super easy to work with. They're a delight. We got this $20,000 institutional grant. You're probably sitting here saying, oh, well, you got $20,000. That's how you were able to do this. It definitely helped. But I think a lot of what we did we were able to do without without our money. It just kind of was an icing on the cake. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk about that, like, we paid people, we did this, we did that, which is, you might roll your eyes at, depending on the institution that you're with. But a lot of the work we're able to do, I think, can be done without funding as well. We found, funny enough, it's hard to spend money on something that's free. And so we ended up needing to do a bunch of stuff to be able to spend this money. Our goal was for faculty to show intent to use in the future. We didn't measure our faculty using OER. We measured intent to use OER in the future. That allowed us to get a sense of what faculty are thinking rather than what faculty are doing. Because as we stated in the word cloud, and as we're going to kind of keep stating, it takes time for folks to adopt OER. The grant was originally scheduled for 12 months. We ended up tacking an extra 6 months onto it. So it was about 18 months now that we ended up working on this grant. 18 months to 2 years. I'm going to ask that you reply to these statements. Again, same deal with the Mentimeter. Get in the Mentimeter if you're not there yet. And just, it should pop up on your phone or your screen an option to kind of give you to rate these statements from a strongly disagree to a strongly agree.
Can you define what you mean by faculty-led professional learning?
Absolutely. So professional learning that is not led by an administrator, is not led by someone who is like considered as a higher up, but professional learning for faculty that is led by faculty, that is presented by faculty, that is kind of driven by faculty. Is that helpful? Isn't Mentimeter cool? I love it. Another second for responses. So our Center for Teaching and Learning uses a faculty-led model. It's entirely ground up. Like I said, I'm a faculty director. I'm not just like an administrator who sits in an office and never interacts with students. I'm a faculty director with a 75% course load, so I know what faculty are doing. We have a faculty fellowship program at Stevenson University for the Center for Teaching and Learning that is totally separate from the OER work that we did. We're between 4 and 6 faculty fellows every year are fellows of the Center for Teaching and Learning and help us with our programming and stuff like that. It's a 2-year term and it's an alternating years. And so every year we admit new fellows, because the first year we did it, which was before my time, there were, let's say, 3 fellows. Then the second year there were 2 fellows, but those 3 fellows came off. So now we had more room. And that way there's always a little bit of institutional memory, even aside from the director, that there's always kind of some holdover. And so we had the faculty fellows, but we also worked on, and that's kind of our general, the way we run our professional learning is very faculty led, very bottom up. We use that model again with this grant. And we use this model again with our push to encourage OER usage, because what we really wanted to do was get folks to see from their peers the way OER works for them. They hear from me all the time. They get emails from me all the time. They're kind of sick of hearing from me. But hearing from folks in their own departments, we thought was really going to encourage people to maybe give this a shot. So in the fall of 2023, we recruited 7 ambassadors from faculty. The important part here is they had varied backgrounds and they had a varied level of OER usage, meaning we didn't just pick people who use OER all the time. We didn't just pick people who were super familiar with OER. A number of the folks we picked had no idea what OER was and no familiarity with OER, and that was intentional. We really wanted to pick folks who were kind of all over the place with it. We didn't want to pick just, here's a bunch of experts. They were paid $1,000 each in a couple of installments. This is one of those times where we might be rolling our eyes because we had money. Here's the thing about that is, even when I don't pay faculty and I ask them to like present at our faculty in service and stuff like that, we get a ton of volunteers. And as such, even though this work was pretty heavy, the folks that are passionate about equity, about helping students, attend college, even if they may not have a lot of money at home, things like that, are usually pretty down to get involved in OER stuff. A lot of the people, before they knew they were going to get paid, expressed interest in us. I'd say about 4 or 5 of the 7 expressed interest to the grant team even before they knew they were getting paid. We gave them a task that was, at some point, over the course of this grant, you're going to design 1 or 2 things. It might be a professional learning session. It might be a infographic. It might be a Kahoot. It might be a video, which I'm going to show you in a bit. It's a whole bunch of stuff it might be. But before we could have them design anything, we conducted some professional learning with these ambassadors. It was really important, and this is why our grant ended up stretching out more than a year. It was really important for us to sit down with the ambassadors and really dive deep into professional learning and what OER was, and the positives and the difficulties that faculty have with it. We looked at professional resources, we looked at academic articles, we looked at options for OER usage across all of our different content areas, we looked at a lot of different things because we found that was really important. And then we hosted a big January 2024 kickoff after our faculty in-service. It was super successful. About 55 of our 120 faculty attended. This was like the big kickoff of our public-facing version of this grant. What do you think? You could say this or write it in the chat. Was the secret to the success of this event? Guess. Say it in the chat or shout it out. Colleen nailed it. Colleen absolutely nailed it. We fed them. Colleen and Ron are on it. We fed them, and that got them there. We fed them lunch, and when we fed them lunch, they came. And they came, and what we did is we gave a short presentation. Sorry, I went too far. We gave them a good lunch, and we gave a short presentation about, here's what we're going to do over the course of the next year and change. After that short presentation, it was like literally 15 minutes. The ambassadors split up among all the tables and chatted with the different faculty about what they think their concerns and needs are about OER. This was why it was so important for us to emphasize to teach the faculty and teach the faculty ambassadors in advance, was we needed to do that work with them in advance so they were prepared to have these conversations with the faculty. Throughout the rest of the spring, our ambassadors did their programming with the faculty. They were able to participate in this programming. They did, again, some of it was professional learning sessions, some of them created external things for faculty to use, stuff like that. Here's a list of everything we did. Take a look. I think this is a good opportunity to stop because I'm going super fast. I'm gonna be done way before an hour, which I did not anticipate. I anticipated lots of questions and stuff. I think this is a good place to stop and say, hey, look at any of these. Do you want me to elaborate on any of these? Are there any questions? Or just in general, any questions so far?
So when you were talking with faculty about OERs, were you talking about adoption, adaption, creation, all of the above?
All of it. It was mostly adoption of existing resources because adaption and creation is a big ask for folks initially. But it was adoption. It was, what is the holdup? Why are you not considering this? Do you even know what this is? Are you saying, what is your concerns with it? What difficulties do you think you're having with it? Things like that. A big portion of why I want to read this text. A big portion of that conversation was, what is going on that is preventing you, do you think, from utilizing this? And Charmaine, I'm going to answer you in 1 second, but one of the things that we heard from faculty a lot was, well, I like my test banks. I like my question banks. You know, I can't use my question banks. If I'm using a different book, I don't get question banks. What do I do? And that's why this event on 320 called the Gospel of Hypothesis was really important. And this was something I ran. Does anybody use Hypothesis through Blackboard or their LMS?
I use Perusall, which is similar.
Similar. It's become a joke in professional learning sessions through Zeno over here that, like, whenever anybody mentions Hypothesis, I'm just going to start talking. I love it, love it, love it. I'm the university's biggest advocate for a Hypothesis. I use it in all of my classes all the time. For those who are unfamiliar, what Hypothesis does is it allows you to upload a document to Blackboard, and it gets what it does is students then look through it and they get to kind of all comment at the same time. I'm actually going to pull one up now that we're talking. And I'm sorry I didn't have this prepared, and I probably should have, but I'm going to pull one up right now that I have my students do. It's really easy for me to find this. So this is in my trauma-informed teaching sophomore seminar, and I gave them the social justice standards. And as you can see, they're commenting and replying to each other. I'm replying to some of their stuff as agreed, but they're all operating off the same document. It's kind of a way to force them to actually do the reading also, which is really nice. But I love Hypothesis. And the reason I did this Hypothesis session at this time was because faculty were so concerned about, well, what do I do? How do I get my test back? And I said, watch. You can throw your thing in Hypothesis and make them read. And if you're worried about a test bank, you can take a document or a page or a couple of pages from an OER text, throw it into ChatGPT, and it'll give you your questions. And so this Gospel of Hypothesis piece was twofold. It was called the Gospel of Hypothesis as kind of a joke on me for someone who loves hypothesis. But it was also a bit of an AI element as well, where you could take the text, run it through an AI generator, and have it help you come up with questions based on this idea of how am I going to get my test bank, because that was something faculty were concerned about. Charmaine asked what is the tabling for students. So we worked with the SGA, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later. We worked with the SGA to let students know that OER was a thing, because a lot of them didn't know that OER was a thing really at all. And so we worked with the SGA to let students know. And so SGA tabled, we bought some snacks with the money from the grant. I went to Costco, it cost like $50. It wasn't that serious. We had a couple of trifolds, and students had the opportunity to write a note to a professor who uses OER and like thank them. And then we emailed the faculty out and kind of shouted them out for getting a thank you from students. Just another kind of encouragement it was another encouragement towards faculty to try to like encourage them to consider using this stuff. Like, hey, look how much your students appreciate you for using OER. Any other questions? And I'm going to talk about the Summer Institute, so don't get too worried about that. But any other questions?
I do have a
Or
quick
just general?
question.
Yes.
The most grant session, so that was
Mhm.
that geared toward faculty then applying for their own most
Yes.
grants? And did you find that the timing of that worked, or would it have been more useful like later when people were closer to knowing what was up? Or yeah, how did that go?
So yeah, that's a really great question. So most offers, and for those who are unfamiliar, most offers individual grants as well, both to create OER or to start utilizing OER. And so this was run by two of our team members one of the grant team members and one of the ambassadors who have gotten OER create grants. And so they ran this, and they did this because I think the application was due at the beginning of March. I think it was due like 3/1 or something. And so they did this specifically timed because we wanted to make sure that faculty had some time to think about it. And it was just teaching them what the grant does, how it provides you, what kind of help it provides you, and kind of what you can do if you're thinking about it, right? Oh, I want to take this book that I use and I want to create an OER version of it by synthesizing 9,000 other books and getting some of my own research. And I use this OER book, but it's old and outdated. I want to fix it and update it. And it's allowed to be remixed. And so I want to get a grant to spend some time doing that and get some support. What do these things mean? And so that was the purpose of this. And I think we had a pretty decent success. I don't remember exactly how many folks showed up to that, but we had some pretty decent success with this.
Great, thank you.
Of course. Anything else?
Oh, just one more quick question about hypothesis.
Please,
So
ask
does
as much as you want.
Stevenson, because I use Perusall some too, just in the free version, but I think hypothesis is more robust. But does Stevenson pay for an institutional subscription for that? That's something that we've had a little bit of.
Yeah, this is integrated into our Blackboard.
Okay.
It's
Thanks.
an institutional subscription that's integrated into our Blackboard.
Yeah, great. Thank
which
you.
is part of the kind of whole deal.
Yeah.
Which again is part of the thing of like, there's limits based on what your university is doing or not doing. But this is integrated into ours. As you see, we had project team members just go to a department meeting and talk to them. We had larger events, we had smaller events. We kind of did this all over the place. We also had our OER Summer Institute. We had 7 additional faculty members participate in a 3-day program. And what it was like from 10 to 12, we would do professional learning on a topic. So I did mine on our librarian member of our grant team did hers on like literally finding OER. I did mine more on like open education, not as much OER, but like open education, open teaching, things like that. And then the third grant team member who has created a book whose math textbook is an OER book and is like used all over the place because he's like the greatest. Did his on what's called Franken courses, where I don't have a book I like, but I'm just going to like piece together 9,000 different OER things. We provided lunch, and then there was work time afterwards. And so we stuck around, and they had 2 hours. So it was like 2 hours, lunch came, or someone came picked up lunch, and then it was 2 hours of work time, where faculty had the opportunity to sit there and work on stuff. I'm going to actually go into this database. I want to find a book I'm going to use. I want to piece together 4 books because I want to use this as a Franken course because I really want to make sure that I'm utilizing OER for my students. So the Summer Institute was just another thing we did in the summer of 2024. We did it in July because that's when it worked for faculty. We had 7 faculty members. We paid them $300 each. Not a big expense. Again, different universities at different levels of ability to do this. Because we had this grant, we were able to do this, but it wasn't a huge expense. At the same time, we were working with the library to redesign the page, our landing page for OER. Our landing page for OER hadn't been touched since during the very, very early days of the pandemic. It had not been touched since then. All it was just, here's a list of 9,000 OER databases. It was not understandable. It was really hard for folks to access. So we used some of our funds to work with the company that helps with the design of our pages, which that is something that you could just do. Like don't need to work with if you have someone on your team who could do this, you just do it. And we helped adapt it. We linked to resources that were created by ambassadors, and we designed it to look a little like a choose your own adventure. So here's our landing page now. And you'll notice if you look on the left, it says, I'm ready to, you get to kind of pick one. The bottom, what can I do with OER, is the exact same 4 options. I just couldn't fit it into one screen for a screenshot. So we were able to define what OER is, and then give faculty the option of, I'm ready to do what. And one example of something that our faculty put together, did I put this other one on there? I meant to, and I didn't. I might, give me 1 second. I might go to my screen because I want to show you guys what our page looks like, because I like it a lot. I'm sorry, I thought this was an additional slide, but it was not. So here's our webpage. And if we are at the open source, if we're in our open educational resources thing, we go to our web guide. So if we go to the I'm ready to, let's say, update a whole course, it brings you to all of these. I'm ready to update an assignment. Same deal, but this is a little more broad because some stuff is just going to be assignments. I want to learn about OER. Here's some basic information with OER. And on this basic information page is some of the videos that our faculty created. Mentimeter has been funky with me using YouTube within it sometimes, so I'm going to try, but I also have the video pulled up separately. Let's see if it yells at me. Yeah, it's going to yell at me. So let's see if we have sound. Please tell me if you have sound while this starts.
No sound.
There is sound?
No.
No sound. Go. I'm going to unshare and reshare and see if I can get sound up. And if not, I'll just send you guys a link and you can watch it real time. Let's hit share. There it is. I didn't click share sound. That's on me. It's not going to let me. This is one of those things where the administrator access isn't going to let me share with sound. You don't hear anything, right? Sorry, guys.
No,
So,
no sound.
So I'm going to put it in the chat. You can watch it on your own. I'm sorry about that, guys. So watch it on your own time. But this is one of the things that faculty made to kind of introduce this. It was just a silly video to kind of get folks ready for OER, but at the same time, it was a really good opportunity for faculty to get to ready and kind of get primed for this sort of thing. We also worked with students. Like I said before, we worked with our SGA to help raise student awareness about what OER was and to shout out faculty that we had 2 student workers who helped, and these were part of our library student workers. And so if you have library student workers, like they can just do the work. Not only did they like help us like with some of the harder basics of it, like most page, like you get to have your little university like profile thing. And they helped us create our university profile and reach out to faculty and get the books they use and stuff like that uploaded on there. But they also gave us guidance. Here's what students want. Here's how we teach students about this. Finally, a student was able to design materials for us as well. I want to show you, if you look at the top of this, look at the banner on my Blackboard page. A student designed these. And basically we sent this out to faculty and said, if you use OER, pop this into the banner of your Blackboard page so students know that you use OER. And take a minute to teach students what that means. Hey, this class has a free book. That's awesome. You know, get excited because this class has a free book, right? This book for this class is Trauma-Informed School Practices, Building Expertise to Transform. Hey guys, get excited because this has a free book. That's something that we did that faculty were super hyped about, that they got to put that up in their Blackboard panel so that all their students can see, hey, I'm taking the time to find you free materials because I care about your ability to afford your education. And here's our results. We gave 2 surveys, one in May, which is already a year after, like kind of the end of that academic year of the program. 46% said they were going to use it more. And then when we did it in January 25 at the very, very end of the grant, 50% said they're going to use it more. Not a huge change, but if you think about it, considering that this first time we did it was a year into the grant already, these are pretty good numbers. You know, like I said before, our question was intent to use, and so we were going for intent to use. Our big thing here is OER free and low cost materials. Not you're just using OER, but OER free and low cost materials. These were our results. We ended our grant. After the spring 2025 in-service, we gave a little swag bag to celebrate the work and lunch. That was just like because we had that. Honestly, if I'm being honest, that's just because we had money left over. Like that was just a fun thing to do. I wouldn't, like, that's not one of those things you have to do. We gave lunch. We also put out the form, the QR code for folks to actually take this survey. That was kind of our subtle goal, was to have people actually take the survey. And we also let faculty know that like this OER work isn't ending. It's going to be housed in our Center for Teaching and Learning going forward. That was really important because now folks know to come to me to ask for OER stuff. I was still on the grant team. I was the leader. I was the administrator of the grant. So like they were coming to me anyway. But it was important that they knew that like going forward, come talk to me and I'll help you with the grant. Or I'll help you with any OER work you have. Our theory of change, and I alluded to this earlier, this is what we base our entire work on. Teachers, whether we're talking about kindergarten teachers or we're talking about higher ed, are always thinking about their teacher. It is part of the job, and it is an unfortunate part of the job that a lot of institutions will take advantage of faculty that are always thinking about their teaching and willing to go above and beyond because they love their students. But at a certain point in time, every faculty member is thinking about their teaching. And they're thinking about how can I be better? How can I change? What can I update? If we just keep hitting people over the head with OER at every single opportunity, that inevitably, one of those times they're thinking about their courses, they're going to think about OER. I cannot count the amount of emails I have received that's just like, hey, I'm thinking about my course. How do I find OER? That's all we want, was for like, hey, next time you sit and think about your course, when it's the summer and you're sitting by the pool and you're just kind of spacing out and you're like, what am I going to do this year? Oh, right, we had that OER thing. Let me email Jesse and ask about OER. That was our theory of change. If we just keep hitting people over the head with OER at every opportunity, then eventually they'll think about it when they're thinking about their courses, and that will allow us to be successful in implementing more OER at the university. And this is the part that I think is transferable, regardless of if you have funds or not. If OER is just constantly there, hey, here's an OER session during your faculty in-service, here's an OER session during the academic year. Hey, I'm teaching about OER for, I'm teaching my department about OER. Hey, here's some options for how to look for OER. Hey, have you thought about OER for this book? Hey, on my Center for Teaching and Learning website, here's a big link to MOST's website that'll let you browse OER. If it's just on your mind or on a faculty member's mind, then when the time comes that they're thinking about time to adapt their courses, maybe they'll think about looking for an OER book or any element. Let me change one tiny piece. Can you change one module to OER? Can you change one assignment to OER? You know, is there anything you can do? And that's it. That was our theory of change. And I think we were pretty successful. And like anecdotally, I could tell you that just the conversations that I've had with faculty since this grant has ended, I've gotten so many like, hey, I'm thinking about this. How do I do that? Which has been pretty successful. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Any questions, any comments, anything I can address or go back to or elaborate on?
How often do you
Thank you,
go
Mary.
back and review your OER?
So one of the things our student workers did was they went back and they reviewed all of our links to make sure they were live and reviewed all those stuff to make sure that they worked. When we're encouraging faculty to use OER, we encourage them to do the same way they do with textbooks. Check your textbook to make sure it's good, check your OER to make sure it's still good. You know, you have to it's the same way with traditional textbooks, you know. If you're assigning a traditional textbook every year for 5 years, you got to make sure that book is still relevant. And so we encourage faculty to do the same thing. Me personally, I use OER most when I teach child development. I use a OER book for child development, and I am working on remixing that book to be a little more up to date. I am likely not going to have time to do it before the next time I teach the course, but I'm really trying to get a remixed version of that book out, because there's some stuff in there that's a little bit behind the times, and I also just think certain things can be covered a little bit better. So I might apply for a most individual create grant. Who knows?
Yeah, quick question on the remix.
Yeah.
Another question in terms of just like institutional resources. Does Stevenson have like a Pressbook subscription? One of the things like that we're experiencing in terms of, you know, that inertia is just that, well, there are these books out there for OERs out there for our gen eds, but they're kind of dated, and it's not only is it time consuming to update it, but we don't have a Pressbook subscription. So like, how are we gonna, you know, that technical piece of it, like where are we gonna put it? Who's gonna host it? All of that stuff. So how do you adjust those questions?
So we don't have a Pressbook subscription. What we do and what we say to folks is, you do not need to change your entire course. You do not need to do everything. Can you find one module that you can, rather than having to buy a second book for this one topic, can that one module or two modules about one specific topic use an OER? And even if it's not using, here's a traditional OER book, if you're using academic articles that our library has a subscription to, it's still free and low cost materials, right? So can you convert one thing over to something that's free and low cost? Because to your point, the remixing is hard and the franking courses is hard, but that's why we really try to encourage folks to do one thing at a time. You don't need to redesign the whole course. You do not need to reinvent the wheel all in one shot. Because if you do one module now and then one module next time you teach the course, and one module next time you teach the course, all of a sudden now you have an entirely OER course. Amelia asked me what kind of professional learning did we offer the ambassadors. It was very similar to what we did in the summer session, which was, again, how do you look for OER and where do you find it? I did a thing on open education and open teaching. And then we did the franking courses piece. How do you piece together franking courses? We also did the piece on AI and how you can utilize AI and to help kind of with the text bank. Because like when we did the breakout at our opening lunch, one of the biggest things that came up was like, I love my question banks. And so we really made sure to hit that with the faculty, but we also anticipated that, which is why we had hit it previously with the ambassadors. And thank you, Mary. We took our time, and honestly, like, I know I've said this a lot of different times already, and I don't think Nancy O'Neill is like watching over my shoulder, but like most is so accommodating, and they are so. When I ran the nonprofit, as you know, Kimi gave my bio at the beginning, when I ran the nonprofit, we dealt with federal and state grants, and federal and state grants are not flexible at all. The end of the calendar year, I would spend a week locked in my office getting all of our stuff ironed out. Most is so chill and so accommodating, and all they want is for you to be using it and doing the work. And so when we were like, hey, I don't think we're going to be able to pick ambassadors, teach them, and kick off in the fall, they were like, okay, just pick ambassadors and teach them in the fall, kick off in the spring. It's no big deal. Do it next fall. They were so easy and nice and relaxed and easy to work with that it made us able to use an incremental approach. So like truly cannot recommend working with most either as an institution or individually highly enough. And if you're thinking like about doing an institutional grant in the future and you want to talk to me, my email is on the screen. Any other questions?
If you hadn't received the grant, do you still think you would have created the OER? How much of a difference did the grant make, I guess?
So the grant helped us in that it was already a university initiative, but it kind of like was a kick in the pants to really hit this university initiative. If that makes sense. You know, every university has a thousand initiatives, and so what the grant did is really focus us on utilizing focusing on OER as a university initiative we really wanted to focus on. I think that a lot of this work would have been very, very doable without the grant. Like I said, you know, the Center for Teaching and Learning has a faculty fellows program already. I could have just tasked the faculty. I could have just basically used the faculty fellows as the ambassadors, and we could have done it that way. It would have been perfectly successful. You know, rather than having this big lunch after in-service, if we had just focused on OER during our faculty in-service, which is a requirement for faculty, and we do it every semester anyway, you know, we could have just, it would have been really doable to hit OER within the grand scheme of what we do at CETL anyway. The grant just helped us focus on it as an in addition to rather than as an instead of. If that makes sense. Is that a helpful answer?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I like your emphasis on incremental steps, because I think a lot of times when we think of OER, we think you have to do it all, but those baby steps would really help to get that buy-in and make it less overwhelming.
That was our whole thing. Was like, can we just like, can you do one thing? Can you take one project? Can you take one assignment? Can you take one module and turn it into OER? And listen, there's a ton of faculty whose specialties and the subjects they teach, it's not going to exist. There just isn't going to be an OER for it, and that stinks, and I'm sorry. I'm in education. There is not a lot of good OER in education. There just isn't. And so we don't have the opportunity within the School of Ed to do a ton of OER. On the other hand, our math department is 100% OER. And this is partially because the chair of our math department wrote a textbook. That's amazing. Math for the People, if you are at your university and are thinking of a new math book, Math for the People is amazing for intro math. But our goal is just to do these little things, right? That's all we want to do. And if even in education, if generally there isn't anything great, what can we do? Can we use a couple academic articles instead of a textbook that they have to buy? And that would help. You know, there's little things we can do. I also should add, and this isn't in here anywhere, we do not do a great job, and we did not do a great job as a university of tracking which courses use OER. That is recently being changed. Originally, it was just like, did you check a box in your bookstore order? And if you didn't, tough luck. Now we have actually updated our entire system for the book ordering so that it's centralized by department. And that way our department chairs kind of get a spreadsheet. And faculty have to indicate if a course uses OER in that spreadsheet. And that'll get us better information about like how many courses, how many sections out of how many total sections a semester use OER, which I think will be very, very informative for us as a university.
I don't mean to interrupt the conversation, but Ron is going to go ahead and post the certificate verifying attendance. So he's going to share his screen. So feel free to take a screenshot of that. And if anyone has additional questions, please continue.
Any other questions for me?
Do you find you get buy-in from specific areas?
Yeah, our sciences are just like, our School of the Sciences is amazing at that. Just generally our School of the Sciences absolutely is just outstanding. Again, but it's easier for them to use OER. Right? There are better books in math and science for OER than there are in certain things like education. the one that I use the biggest, the OER I use in the biggest course I teach is my Psych 206 Child Development. That's a psych prefixed course, even though I'm a professor in the School of Ed. And because it's kind of a generic psych course, that like stuff doesn't super change in the world of child development, and it changes a little, and that's why I want to remix the textbook, but it doesn't change a ton. I'm able to use OER for that. Whereas like methods for teaching social studies, there isn't an OER that exists there, right?
Any other questions?
I just put my email in the chat so that people can see it in case, because I just took it down from the screen, but I did just put it in the chat.
Well, I know I've enjoyed and learned quite a bit. The tips, keep bringing it up, keep bringing it up. I'm going to say that over and over again.
That's the thing, honestly, our whole theory of change was just like keep bringing it up so that it's in their mind when they're thinking about their courses on the beach over the summer. Because one thing that we cannot do as teachers is stop thinking about teaching. So if it's on your mind while you're thinking about teaching, it's going to be, you might actually use it. That was our whole theory of change. But thank you guys. This was a blast. I love talking about this stuff. And please email me with any questions. Or if you decide you want to apply for a most institutional grant and want to chat, send me an email.
Thanks so much, Jesse. It's good to hear about a success story.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. And I think we're going to have even more folks using it going forward, which is awesome. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate giving me some time this morning. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you.
And I'll hang out for a couple minutes in case anybody wants to ask me anything else.
Thanks.